Welcome to another episode of Wellness Curated. As you know, the aim of this podcast is to help you lead a healthier, happier, more hopeful life. And we do so by getting you ideas, trends, tools, techniques, approaches from all over the world. This season, we're talking about spiritual well-being. And in today's episode, we're going to explore the profound topic of healing from trauma. And that's why today we have a life-transforming breathwork coach, Christian Minson. He's an international speaker. He's a best-selling contributing author, a trainer, and a coach. Christian was a monk for 10 years. And he draws on that experience of his being a monk in a yogic monastery to guide people through their lives, through their professional and personal lives. And he offers inspiration, practical tools for healing, and he helps them create a life they love. He combines ancient wisdom and modern techniques, which is always an amazing combination to me. Welcome to the show, Christian, and thank you for taking the time to be here with us today.
Yes, thank you. I'm very excited today.
So am I, because I think our readers are going and our listeners are going to love this show. Christian, tell me, how did this journey that you went through influence your understanding of trauma healing?
Oh boy. Well, I'd say to answer that last question, my journey helped me learn that suppressed emotions can create a lot of chaos and havoc in your life. An inability to concentrate, exacerbation of moodiness. And so my journey really, my journey as a breath worker came from after 10 years of being a monk in a meditative order, more of an Eastern philosophy, ones that you're familiar with. There was a time when I was getting these inner promptings to leave, and it was time. It was telling me it was time to go, and this was very difficult to deal with because, I mean, when you sign up to be a monk, it's kind of like signing up to get married. You plan to do it for life. You don't say I'm going to be a monk or I'm going to be married for 2 years and then I'll go do something else. So when this was coming up, it brought up a lot of questioning in me and a lot of soul searching and to sort of bridge the gap. I say it was akin to somebody who, if you ever contemplated getting a divorce, if you contemplated moving out of your hometown to who knows where next, or quitting your job without something to move into next. And if you've ever had to make any of those decisions, you know that there's a lot of angst and anxiety that come with that, a lot of self-doubt, questioning, am I doing the right thing? What is the right thing to do? It started to stir up old energies, unresolved energies within me, and created this chaos in my brain, which made it very difficult to even practice my meditation techniques. These techniques were the pinnacle of our practice as monks, now became useless to me because I just could not concentrate. And this is where I got introduced to breathwork. One of my monastic companions, he said, I've tried this breathwork thing out. I think you'd really resonate with it. And so really long story short, I started to work with the breath and the techniques of breathwork. And I found that it really helped to release in a cathartic way a lot of these old stored energies and emotions, to help me really cope, to help me to get a grounding and a footing in my life so that I could start to really tune into what was best for me, what course of action was best for me in my life. During the breath work, when I really tuned in on a heart level, it really helped me to see that what my soul was craving, what were the direction that my life wanted to go, was to leave and to re-enter the world to continue my spiritual adventure out here. And so I took a deep breath, both literally and proverbially, and made that decision to step out into the world. And I can honestly say, because I took the time, again, with the breathwork process to really get in touch with what was truly going on deeper inside of me, it helped me to, I've never looked back. I've never felt like I made the wrong decision.
What ashram were you at? Where were you?
Yes. Well, the ashram was in California, in Los Angeles, California, which surprises a lot of people. The spiritual master of that ashram, now passed on, but was Paramahansa Yogananda, and the organization was the Self-Realization Fellowship.
Now, on that note, Christian, will you explain the concept of breathwork to our listeners? And how can it be effectively used as a tool for healing from trauma?
Oh, yes. So when we talk about breathwork, I want to make the distinction that when I talk about breathwork, I categorize what I teach and what I talk about as integrative breathwork. When you start to look at the world of breathwork and breathing, there's all sorts of techniques and all sorts of ways of approaching it, from the ancients of India in the past, pranayamas, to now when I talk about integrative breathwork, I'm really talking about a modern day wave of breathwork that started around the 1970s. Okay, so what integrated breathwork does that's different than, say, pranayamas and such, which are generally for bringing ourselves into a calm state of being and mind. This kind of integrated breathwork helps dig up and bring to the surface old unintegrated energies and experiences from the past, what we might call trauma. It actually first stirs things up, and that can be somewhat feel somewhat chaotic as these energies are coming up to be released. But really, what we're striving to do is release our grip on this stuff that we've held under the surface for so long, and that's usually under the surface of our subconscious mind, and bring it to the surface so it can be released, so it can be integrated. And then we reach these states of calm that these other techniques of pranayama and meditation can achieve.
So what you're saying is that initially there will be some chaos, or there is likely to be some chaos when old unintegrated experiences come up to the surface.
We don't want to feel those energies. It's natural that we don't want to feel them. But to not feel them, we stuff them down, we suppress them, we lock them in the closet of our consciousness, or we numb them out with alcohol and drugs, or we run from this activity to that activity, constantly trying to avoid those feelings. Okay. But all that does is it's like a volcano underneath the surface. This energy is bubbling, and it continues to influence our life, either by leaking out, or eventually it's just going to explode like a volcano. But with breath work, we can, in a intelligent way, bring that energy to the surface so that we can release it consciously. Now, as it comes to the surface, it crosses our conscious threshold, so we may temporarily re-experience some of the energies of that trauma. And here's where it may feel chaotic, or may feel like we're going through this experience again. But the good news is that it's, we used to say in a retreat that I worked at, what's coming is going. What's coming is going, meaning what's coming up is coming up to be released. And if we just stay with this breathwork process, I've seen over the past 16 years that it literally allows that energy to release, in a very cathartic way. We feel this sensation of this weight coming off our shoulders and this clarity, this lightness of being after, that's the calm after the storm, so to speak. But it does take that one brave moment of being willing to deal with that energy, consciously and head on. And, the stimulus for dealing with that is that if you don't, you're just carrying that energy with you, for until you do decide to deal with it. And it is going to come up, in leaky ways or in explosive ways if you don't deal with it.
Will you talk us through or guide us through a simple breathwork exercise, which will help people in dealing with trauma and then in carrying on with their lives?
I teach what I call a 5-minute daily joy jumpstart. If you start doing a longer session on your own and it all starts to come to the surface, you might be a little bit frazzled in the chaos and not know what to do. So I always recommend that before you venture into longer sessions of breath work, that you first practice it with a skilled practitioner like myself or many people out there. And then once you get used to the lay of the land, how to do it, you can, of course, go on these longer sessions on your own. That's the ultimate goal is self-empowerment, working with your breath, your life force energy, and having that in your command. But to start out with, this 5-minute daily joy jumpstart is really a model, the same model that I'd use in the longer session, what I call a full, free flowing breath, the breath flow process, which means we're breathing a full breath from our belly, our abdomen, all the way up to our chest, rather than shallow breathing, which is an epidemic in our society. A free breath, which means nice and relaxed, easeful, graceful, not a lot of effort, not a lot of control, but just a letting go. This is a vital part of the process as we start to get into it deeper. And then a flowing breath, meaning connected. This is what we might call a circular breath pattern. And like a circle, there's no beginning or end. It's simply continually inhaling or exhaling, inhaling or exhaling. It's also important for that breath to be rhythmic, cyclical, consistent, rather than disjointed and maybe pausing, breathing faster, breathing slower. So it would look something like, now I want to make a point too. We breathe through the mouth and we breathe at a faster pace when we're doing this process, whether it's the 5 minutes or the longer session. Now, if you want to breathe through the nose, it's okay, especially on this 5-minute session. And I just want to make a caveat here. Many people are concerned about mouth breathing. There's some literature out there and such that espouses that mouth breathing is a negative way to breathe. Mm-hmm. And I would just like to make the clarification that chronic mouth breathing, when we're talking about chronic mouth breathing, breathing through the mouth all the time, meaning you rarely yes. or never use your nose, that can be an issue, and that ideally should be addressed. And I want you to come to me if you're listening out here and you breathe through your mouth chronically. However, breathing through the mouth for short periods of time for the purpose of getting more flow of oxygen into our bodies, like when we're exercising vigorously or we're performing breath work, or even when our nose is stuffed up, we have to breathe through the mouth then. So there are legitimate times when mouth breathing is okay. And this is one of them. Okay. So we're breathing through the mouth to get more oxygen in. We're getting that breath into the belly and then bring it in the chest and then out. Okay. So, and you should feel this expansion, meaning like a balloon, you're blowing up, and then that inflation goes all the way up to the throat, and then you just naturally let it go, not controlling it, but just relax, and then you do it again. This gentle breathing just starts to help dislodge little little entities of our trauma.
So you're saying that the in-breath is longer than the out-breath. The out-breath is almost like a sigh.
It for me, it ends up manifesting that way. But if they're about the same length of time, it's, that's not a huge issue with the whole process. Okay. More the issue is getting a full breath, but being relaxed with the breath and keeping it continuous and cyclical.
I'm sure through your experience, you've been through lots and lots of different cases of healing with breath work. Give me the example of something you've been through, or someone you've been through who has released trauma through this journey of breath work.
Sure. One woman comes to mind. She came to me with the goal of losing weight. She had issues with her weight since a young child, always feeling like she's fat, at the point where even at one point she battled with a bout of anorexia. And, this really came from and created a negative self attitude, which started to also reflect in her relationships. So not only was she feeling bad about herself, but it seemed like her world, she wasn't very happy with her world and her relationships around her. My sessions are usually about 2 hours in length, a combination of coaching and getting, digging mentally into the, what's going on and what is really the desired outcome, then moving through the breathwork process, then at the end kind of debriefing what happened in that process and making a plan for where we can go in the future. So anyway, through this process, it began to reveal the seed experiences that made her feel this low self-worth. The early experiences with her mother and father, they're chiding her about her weight, even these, jokes, but, with an edge on them that just, she took and amplified in her mind that made her hypersensitive to her weight. And that, the only way that she could feel accepted was to feel like she was rail thin. And so as we worked with this, and this energy came up, and it came up with a lot of crying, it came up with a lot of, emotional release of various kinds, she started to feel better about herself. She started to come to an equilibrium. Our outer world is just a reflection of our inner experience. And so as she started to accept herself, lo and behold, her friends and her community started to seem more friendly and more accepting. And again, that was just a reflection of her own inner relationship. So her whole life went from being depressed and always focused on the negative and hypersensitive and picky about her food and trying not to eat, to actually just letting go of all that and having a joyful zest for life. The icing on the cake was that actually she naturally lost some pounds and was, of course, overthrilled with that. But this was now in a healthy way.
So, Christian, how do you cater your breath work for individuals to deal with different kinds of traumas every time? I'm sure every case is different.
Yeah, exactly. The way that I change from client to client is not so much to adjust the technique. What's amazing is that the technique itself is good for multiple stages of healing. What we do is we adjust our intention, basically. And so I have delineated basically 3 levels of intention, or 3 levels of this healing journey that we go on. The first one is what I call the coping phase. If we remember back to my story of when I started to get these desires to, or these inner promptings to leave the monastic life, I was in chaos. So this is the first intention that, depending on what stage people are at, this is the first thing that breath work can help with, and it can just help us release some of this excess energy to bring ourselves to a more stable, grounded place. That moves us then into the second phase, which is what I call the healing phase. Okay. The healing phase is really starting to dive into the past and starting to dredge up the old energies that caused us to get into this coping crisis in the first place. Old trauma, old experiences that we didn't like or didn't have the capacity to express in the past. The energy of those experiences stays with us and continues to exacerbate a negative influence on our life. So the healing phase is to get in there using the breath work to dredge this energy up and, like you said, have a catharsis, release that energy and bring ourselves into even more stable balance now. That leads then to the third phase of the process, and my favorite phase, because I think this is what we're really designed to be here for, and that is the thriving phase. Now we use the breath work to harness our life force energy and the prana within our life, which is, as you know, a Sanskrit term for that life force energy. And we start to use it to direct to the application of our choosing. What is it? We start to envision a life where we're fully utilizing our God-given talents and energies. And through that breath work, we can actually start to move more in that direction. And so, like I said, I think these other phases are ultimately in service to this last phase, which is really to, embody the God nature of our being.
That's lovely. Now, tell me, Christian, you address one of the misconceptions about breathwork where people get worried when they have to breathe through the mouth. Are there any others that you want to address today?
Yeah, that's a good point. It's definitely that mouth breathing, that it's okay to breathe through the mouth. You're not going to hurt yourself by breathing through the mouth temporarily. Some other misconceptions. I love when it's not happening as much these days, but for the longest time when I would introduce myself as a breath work and I teach breathing, people would laugh and say, I already know how to breathe. Yeah, I wouldn't say it, but in the back of my head, I said, yes, I'm sure you know how to breathe dysfunctionally. And I can be pretty certain of that because, 80% of the people that come through my door, have some kind of dysfunction to our breath. And, it leads to the next common misperception that breathing is something that we don't need to learn how to do. We just do it. And I think that, unfortunately, that comes from the fact that nobody has ever paid attention to breathing so much until now. And of course, the ancient yogis and such who, were a very select subset of our culture. It stands to reason. This is such a vital part. I'd say it is the foundation of our health and happiness. It's the most vital part of our existence. To me, it stands to reason if it's something we're doing, that is something we can learn to do better. I often connect it with the idea of walking. We all walk. We all have learned to walk. But if you watch people walk, some people walk extremely on the outside of their foot, which I think is called pronation. I don't know, but you can correct me if I'm wrong. Other people walk extremely on the inside of their foot, which I think is called supination. And so either of these taken to the extreme are, and compounded over time, will start to create problems in our physiology, knee issues, back issues, hip issues. And, we can even end up having to replace parts over time. If we have these problems, that's usually when they teach people to walk. In the same way, so with breathing, we can breathe too little, we can breathe too much, meaning too forcefully and with too much effort, or there's that golden middle path of a healthy way to breathe.
How does breath work contribute to maybe greater emotional awareness?
Well, for this, it's important to understand that the breath and emotions have an intimate link. All right. We breathe differently. We literally breathe differently with every emotional state that we go to. Fear, anxiety, stress, anger, all these kind of what we'd say less savory emotional states tend to come with what a shallow, more rapid breathing pattern, or they might come with a held breathing pattern. We might find ourselves holding our breath unconsciously for periods of time and then releasing. So the emotion causes this breath pattern to happen. What's interesting, though, is the reverse is also true. This breath pattern will help induce this emotional states. So one of the when we're talking about greater emotional awareness, one of the things is to recognize that if we are in, say, chronic states of stress or anxiety or depression, it may not be that there's anything out there in the field of our life that is immediately threatening or immediately anxiety causing or such, but that we have actually habituated ourselves to a pattern of breathing that's continually reinforcing these negative emotional states. They're constantly saying, hey, be on high stress, be on high alert. So what's great is, happiness, joy, love, peace, feelings of well-being tend to come with what I just expressed, a full, free flowing breath pattern. Our breath is relatively full. Our breath is relaxed. Our breath flows freely and easily. And so those emotions induce that breath pattern. That breath pattern can also induce those emotions. So one of the easiest things we can do when we're feeling stressed, anxious, depressed, any of these, angry even, is to tune into our breath and start to just take some gentle, go into that 5-minute joy jump start. Just replace the way you're breathing with a full free flowing pattern and watch how that helps to shift the emotional component of or how you are feeling emotionally.
What I want to leave our listeners with, and we always try and leave our listeners with some tools, is a way of starting to heal from trauma, and also something that they can continuously do in their life, which will carry on with that healing process. Like you said, life is a journey, and you do come across situations in life which create more trauma. So we want to leave people with both.
Yes, exactly. So life is a journey, and holistic healing, which is what we're talking about, holistic healing takes into account the whole being and recognizes that wellness is a long-term project. Our breath is the foundation of everything we do. Even astute yoga teachers, anyway, will tell you that the movement in the yoga practice comes out of the breath. So as we inhale, we come up and we arch backwards. Then as we exhale, we fold forward. It's not that we fold and then consequently we breathe as well, but the breath is actually inducing the movements. So the breath is the beginning of our life. If we're breathing dysfunctionally, a month isn't going to probably make much difference. A year might not even make much difference. But if you keep compounding that dysfunctional breath for 5 years, 10 years, a few decades, all of a sudden you're experiencing, chronic fatigue or fogginess of brain, all because, our body needs oxygen, and we're, through a dysfunctional breathing, we're feeding it enough to get by, but we're really not feeding it enough.
But not more.
Yeah, not enough to thrive again, not enough to stay healthy and stay on top of our game. Whereas again, if we start breathing this 5-minute joy jumpstart and it starts getting us in the habit of breathing healthy, 5, 10, 15 years down the road, we're still resilient. We're still as strong and as perky as we were, when we're in our 30s, when we're in our 50s and 60s, and our health, our immune system is robust.
Christian, at the end of every session, we do a quick rapid fire round to summarize the session. So very quickly, And exercise to practice is the first step towards healing.
And we know that is the 5-minute daily joy jumpstart, a full free-flowing breath, 5 minutes each day.
Wonderful. One common misconception about breath work?
That the person already knows how to breathe and that they don't need to practice breathing in order to get better at it.
An important piece of advice to those on a healing journey.
The foundation of a balanced, healthy, and happy life starts with the habit of good breathing. So practice it until it becomes an unconscious habit. And if you don't, your breathing will just reinforce a habit that will take you out of balance, unhealthy, and unhappy in your life.
Thank you, Christian. Thank you so much for that lovely chat. That was so useful, and I'm sure our listeners would benefit from it greatly.
Well, beautiful. And I'd just like to say, if anybody's interested in diving further into my work and such, you could find me at breathflow.com. And at that website, you'll find that Inhale Life course, as well as other things that I offer, retreats and different things to get involved in breathwork in a deeper way.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Well, it's been a pleasure chatting with you. You've been a very gracious host.
To my listeners, thank you for being here with us today. We hope you learned something new, and we hope we've helped you get closer to leading a healthier, happier, more hopeful life. I would love to hear from you, so please send me any topic suggestions or questions at anshu@wellnesscurated.life. And please press like if you enjoyed the episode. Please encourage your friends and family to subscribe to my channel. And I also have a book of affirmations. These are the affirmations that I did every morning, and people asked me about them, so I made it into a little book. If you'd like a copy, please send us an email to anshu@wellnesscurated.life. Thank you for being here with us today, and see you next week.